everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of the Heartpanorama podcast. I'm your host, Michelle, and today we're talking about the different facets of the reading experience. As always, please note that any mentions of brands, products, or services in this podcast are only included for discussion purposes and are not paid or sponsored. In last week's podcast, I elaborated on why reading is good for you, and today I'd like to continue where I left off and talk a bit about the different facets of the reading experience we have nowadays. Just like in the last episode, I will include a bonus reading tip at the end, so stay tuned until then. The first aspect that I think is interesting about reading is that there are different kinds of reading. There's classical reading where you just have a printed book and you can feel the pages, there's no electronics involved, and that's actually my personal preference because I like to have this classical experience when I have a book in my hands and can sit down and enjoy the story. But you can also read books on an e-reader. There are plus points for storage. You don't have to fill all your shelves with books. And it's also good for travel. You can take like thousands of books with you on your journeys. And a friend of mine also has an e-reader and she has 900 books on there. And I don't even know how she manages. And then there are audiobooks, and I have seen people discuss whether audiobooks count as normal books, like if you listen to audiobooks, if this counts as reading. And in my opinion, it does, because it basically has the same content as when you're reading, except you're listening to the content, but it's still the book. So the pros of audiobooks are that you can do something else at the same time and still listen to the book, and you can listen to it before going to sleep, for example, so you can close your eyes and rest them, and you can still enjoy the story. Aside from the act of reading itself, the reading experience includes so much more. For example, you can connect with a community that could be either in a book club, which can also take place online nowadays, and you can discuss a book that you've all read and exchange your opinions. But personally, I don't think I could keep up with this because I have that image of reading one book a week in a book club. I don't know if that would be something for me, but it's still an interesting aspect of the whole reading experience. Then there are also a lot of platforms to review books on. For example, Goodreads, that's something that I use. And I personally like this because you can check the ratings of books before buying them and evaluating if it's actually worth the money you spend on them. And on Goodreads, for example, you can bookmark interesting books and track your reading and see which books you've already read over the years. And maybe if you reread them, you can have an overview of when you've read them. And also there are other readers on social media. So for example, there is a fandom, like with any other topic that there is an online community for, and you can exchange your opinions on the books you've read over there with the people that are active online on social media. And what's really cool as well is that not only the readers are online, but also the authors. So you can engage with the authors directly, tell them your opinion, and sometimes they engage with the audience as well. And I think some authors do that quite well because they really ask their audience what they think of different books they've written, or they're currently writing a new book and searching for a name for a new character and ask for people's opinions. And that's quite interesting and exciting actually, because as a reader you get to give some input for the new story that is going to come out. And also, if you follow the authors on their social media, you'll also be the first to find out about new releases. Lastly, aside from the books themselves, you can find additional content online. For example, there are tons of book bloggers and booktubers where you can find recommendations for new books and also book reviews that are more detailed. And also there can be additional book-related content. Take this podcast, for example, where I list the different aspects of reading. Also, if you've been a fan of a book and the book is going to be adapted into a film, then you can compare the film to what you've imagined when reading the book. I often try to read a book before watching the movie, but sometimes I prefer the other way around because I'll be less disappointed, because the movie kind of takes away the task of imagining the characters and their surroundings. And then when I read the book, I imagine those characters from the movie. But I think that really depends on the book. All in all, I think it's so cool that reading isn't just reading, but you can make so much more out of it by engaging with other readers, be it offline or online, and finding all the additional contents. Let me know in the comments below, what part do you enjoy most about the reading experience? And before we finish off this podcast episode, here's my bonus reading tip for today. It's If I Never Met You by Vari McFarlane. I already recommended another book by this author, and I recently read this new book. And this one is about Lori, who has been left by her long-term boyfriend for another woman, and she's trying to make him jealous, so she pairs up with her colleague Jamie and starts a pretend relationship. The plot might remind you of the book To All the Boys I've Loved Before, but the main difference here is that the characters are significantly older, which means they're in their early to mid-30s. I really like this book, especially because it includes a lot of elements that empower women, as well as representation of other ethnicities. At least the protagonist is a person of color, and her struggles are mentioned here and there in the book. We really need more women empowerment and also representation of different cultures and ethnicities in modern literature, in my opinion. As always, if you check out this book, let me know what you think of it in the comments. That was it for today's podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Please like and comment and subscribe with notifications on to stay tuned for next week's episode. We'll start with the last topic block of this podcast season, and I can already tell you so much. We're going to focus on music to round up this season. Until next time, take care and stay healthy. Bye!